Well, everybody, I just got sent this video in chat, and the title and thumbnail really has me interested. You have piqued my interest with this one. It's called Woke Spotting Explained: How the Grift Works. And the title is an image that just says, everything is woke. Now, at first glance, I was like, oh, is this going to be like how to spot wokeness in media? Is this like chud content? It's by a channel called Pillar of Garbage. I was like, oh boy, okay, what is this? Very quickly, though, upon reading the comments and the description, it's clear this video is not a chud channel. This video is directly calling out the grift of people who basically do nothing but call any piece of media that has minorities in it or happens to be unpopular or disliked for any other reason woke in order to piggyback off of any popularity they can glean from whatever is actively being talked about in like social spaces at the moment. I love this guy's community videos. Yeah, I actually I've never watched their videos before, but this came out 2 weeks ago. The premise has me very interested. This is a type of content that really just grinds my gears. And I feel like it's going to be a little bit cathartic for me to watch this, because I do a lot of content debunking this sort of thing, and watching someone else do it on stream sounds like it'd be a lot more pleasant than doing it myself once again. I'm curious to see, though. Do we have another up-and-coming lefty content creator here? Because this channel's got, I'm not saying 75,000 subs isn't a lot, but I feel like, based off what I've already seen, the production quality is going to be high enough that this channel probably deserves more subs than that. So we shall see. Let's check this out. I will, of course, be dropping a link to this video in the chat for you guys to... What did I just click? Okay. I will be dropping a link to the video in chat right now, so you guys can check it out. And there will also be a pinned comment in the description or in the comment section where you can click on it to get to the original video. We obviously want to give credit. Please go send some support their way. And let's check out this video. I'm really curious to see what they have to say. Maybe we can adapt some new arguments to use against these people's garbage content.
Woke. And nothing is woke. Let me explain. As I'm writing this, Marvel's new film Guardians Volume 3 dropped the other day, and, you know, amazing movie. Light spoilers for that film here, but one thing that really caught my eye was the response the film was getting from a certain section of internet users and YouTube channels. You know the ones I'm talking about. You see, now, a couple of months after Guardians 3 was the object du jour of their 2 minutes hate because the posters had Nebula, a female alien character, wearing a t-shirt instead of, I don't know, a push-up bra under a crop top, and this meant that the film was trying to subversively destroy gender.
God, it's crazy how much they breakneck this bullshit at you. I totally forgot about covering this. The chuds flip-flopped on Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as well. I totally forgot about this. Because initially it was all about how 3 months ago it was woke and it's gonna flop and it's awful because the Nebula drama, because she was wearing the shirt, and didn't have, like, I guess, obvious, like, breast bulge or something. I really don't know what it was they were so mad about. But then it was coming out as competition to something else they don't like presently, and they started calling Guardians of the Galaxy not woke. They flip-flopped on it when they realized they couldn't win by shitting on this movie. I totally forgot about that. They hit you with just a new thing so quickly, so repetitively, that you'll forget, oh, wait, 5 lies ago, it's just been proven that the 5 dramas ago, you were lying, you know? It's like, God. Breakneck bullshit is the term. That's what they do. Breakneck bullshit.
Roles. Now that narrative's been flipped. A lot of those same guys have been covering the film's release from the opposite angle, claiming Guardians 3 is non-woke, anti-woke even, that it's, what, the last real Marvel project, a final, non-agenda pushing volley.
There it is. There it is, the flip-flop. 3 months ago, it's woke, destroying femininity, awful, trash, Marvel has fallen. And then here we are.
from exiting director James Gunn, blah blah blah. And that's interesting, right? What's going on here that those decrying a piece of woke trash would pull such a 180? Nebula looks like this in the film too. The thing they latched onto is still there. And if it was so self-evidently a huge issue, how can we reconcile that with this new anti-woke framing? Where are the boundaries of wokeness, both within this film and pop culture more widely? How firm, how changeable are they? And what can testing these boundaries, following this thread?
My favorite was, hey, it's a Gundam. My favorite was, it had to have been the critical drinker and that circle of grifters reaction to House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon got announced, and the right immediately tried to say it was going to be woke garbage. They tried really hard to say it was woke garbage. Hell, I watch a podcast called PKA, and when the show got announced, even they said they're not going to watch it because it's going to be woke garbage. But then the show came out, and it was big, and it was good, and everyone was talking about it, and the night premiere was big. But weeks before the show came out, when they dropped the initial trailer, Critical Drinker and his circle of grifters did a trailer reaction to House of the Dragon's, trailer, and called the stream, "Who cares about House of the Dragon?" And go on about how this show's gonna fail, it's gonna flop, no one cares, everyone's checked out, it's gone woke, the woke nonsense is it's just an agenda, it's gonna be, it's only exists to push an agenda, that kind of thing, your basic, grifter talk. But then the show comes out, the night of. They react to the show as, they do their stream where they're reacting to it as it comes out because they want to shit on it. And they start out and they're talking about how, oh, this is bad, oh, this is cringe. But they're also looking at Twitter and they're seeing Twitter's reaction being positive, and they start changing their tune in real time. And then after the night premiere, Critical Drinker went back and changed the title of his reaction from "Who cares about House of the Dragon" to "House of the Dragon trailer review." Because they don't want to make it clear that they have no actual real opinions on anything. It's all just trying to kowtow to the bandwagon. And then, of course, at the same time, House of the Dragon was seen as the competitor to Rings of Power, which was the thing to call woke trash at the time. So then, of course, they had their prime enemy. Oh, okay, so House of the Dragon is not woke, Rings of Power is woke. So then they had something to compete.
Tell us about the culture of anti-wokeness more widely. Let's have a go at finding out, yeah? Look, let's start with Guardians. So yeah, it's not woke anymore, you guys. I think this new framing's due to, the fact that the main protagonists are white men or played by white men, that they don't get beaten up by women ever, and because some of the critics didn't like it, and they're obviously in on the woke agenda. I think those are the reasons. If I've missed something there, please do fill me in the comments. But hold on. In as much as any film is woke, which, yeah, big asterisk there, Guardians 3 is woke. There's the aforementioned superficially woke elements, like Nebula, the alien cyborg, wearing a t-shirt instead of breasting boobily the whole time, but there's also, the story.
How dare she?
Now, as we've discussed previously on this channel, in 2023, woke doesn't—
Hold on. Are you trying to claim that conservatives are incapable of media analysis? Are you trying to tell me that people with conservative values tend to have a hard time understanding the moral messaging of popular media? I can't believe it.
Doesn't really mean anything specific anymore. It now refers to an ill-defined, sometimes contradictory cluster of meanings, and arguably the whole point of the term's continued usage is to obscure that fact, to blur those lines, to launder right-wing sentiment through this act of distortion. But before woke became this empty signifier, before reactionaries co-opted the term, it referred primarily to being aware of systemic injustices. And if you passed out for, the whole second act, I could maybe see how this doesn't seem relevant to Guardians 3, but if you did watch the whole film, it is kind of clearly woke in that original sense. Jesse Gender made a tweet a while back noting the political underpinnings of the film's counter-Earth sequel.
Well, the crazy thing as well is that woke isn't a new phrase. Woke as we know it now is just another like progressive word that the right has co-opted to mean a bad thing that means the same thing. Social justice warrior, SJW, and woke mean the exact same thing. The word SJW is just now cringe to say unironically, because the people who fell for that have now grown up and grown out of that shit, and seeing someone unironically call someone else an SJW is just, you don't really see that anymore, do you? Like, really, chat. When was the last time you saw someone unironically call another person an SJW? It happens, but when it happens, the person doing it is not winning the argument. Like, they're making a real fool of themselves, usually alongside that, and they've just resorted to insults like, oh, you're an SJW. Like, it's been a while since that was an insult that one would use like unironically online. Woke, on the other hand, is used just as sincerely and unironically as SJW was back in the day. It means the same thing. Woke is becoming cringe to say too. There are a lot more people I've noticed that are waking up to the fact that woke literally means nothing and is usually it just means whenever either something is bad or has minorities in it, depending on who you talk to. And I think a large part, I think we're seeing the same effect happen over again, but they'll just find another word. Before SJW was PC, politically correct. That was the term they demonized and turned into a boogeyman first. South Park played a big part in that.
Sequence. And just to expand on that quickly, one of the High Evolutionary's flaws here is a sort of aristocratic belief in intrinsic, biological quality as the sole determinant of success in life. Nature over nurture. Nature instead of nurture is his whole thing. He copied the America of the 70s to build his perfect world, replacing the people because he thought the people were the problem, only for his homebrew perfected humanity to develop those same issues. We see snatches of crime and poverty on the Guardian's drive-thru of his little city skylines LARP. The film's point here is very clear. Biology isn't the issue. Individual bad apples don't cause this stuff. It's the systems they're acting within, which on a mass scale incentivize certain actions, disincentivize others, block off people's options, yada yada yada, and that's one of the reasons the High Evolutionary is wrong, is a bad guy, a guy who deserved to get his face scratched off. You could very easily follow that thread across the rest of the movie. The idea that individual quality, design, or breeding don't lead to success and happiness, that good, caring systems do, but that's getting beyond the scope of this video. Suffice it to say, while these elements of the film do qualify as woke in that pre-2016 AAVE-derived meaning of the word, from the looks of things, those elements have not made Guardians 2023.
Yeah, but really all that most people who say the word woke now mean when they say it, like, if you look at your average normie who uses that phrase in a derogatory way unironically, they unironically have been convinced that when there are minorities in media, or something that makes them feel off, like a character that feels like they look too much like a stereotype of an SJW. Maybe they're overweight, or they have hair colored in a way that they've been told indicates someone's like woke, or they have piercings or tattoos, or anything like that. They believe that there is an agenda being pushed to sneak and shoehorn characters who are non-white, characters who are LGBT, characters who just sort of fall into this stereotypical aesthetic of what they think an SJW or a woke person looks like. A lot of these arguments apply to both now and 2016, by the way, so that's why I use woke and SJW interchangeably. And so I think that a lot of them, they just say, I hope there's no woke shit in this movie. And they're like, oh, I hope there's no, like, overweight, pink-haired, piercinged SJW who beats up the main character because she's so much better than him. Like, that is what these people have been convinced woke means. But then they'll watch a bunch of content creators who just call everything woke, no matter what. It's very bizarre. I know you guys probably don't know what I'm talking about, but I watch a lot of content creators who make edgy humor content. I watch podcasts and stuff like that, and they're not exactly hard political podcasts, but when the topic of politics comes up, it becomes clear where the political influence is leaking in. And when you hear, like, your favorite apolitical podcasters start talking about how they hope this new show or movie isn't woke, you know that this shit is spreading too much.
3. Online reactionary woke.
Finally! A great Marvel movie without a bunch of woke bullshit politics in it! Finally, a happy fan! They get a happy fan! Hey, how are ya? Without woke identity politics!
This guy has been the most annoying person making reaction content on YouTube for, like, since I was in middle school. I was on middle school, and this guy was grifting reaction content back in the day. This guy doesn't offer any commentary on reaction content, by the way. All he does is kind of over-exaggeratedly react literally to things, like, whoa! And it's like, that's it. And then I guess the most commentary you'll hear from him is going on a rant about how, oh, good, this movie's not woke. It's like, okay. All right. He hates trans people too. Oh, I know. I'm well aware. I'm well aware that he's like a full-on reactionary. Listen, appealing to conservatives will get you money, and that's what he does.
Staring you in the face. Hi, I'm woke politics. Hi, I'm woke politics. Hi, hi.
Nebula's t-shirt did, mind you, but now it isn't anymore, because, well, why exactly? Interestingly, the Mario movie's disputed wokeness followed a similar pattern. The fact that Peach was wearing trousers at one point in the promotional materials, that is her well-known karting.
I really think this is going to be what takes down this era of, like, everything is woke propaganda. I think a lot of these people who are falling for these grifting content creators are going to start to realize, wait, but didn't you say Guardians of the Galaxy was woke? But now it's not? Wait, but wait, didn't you say that the Mario movie was woke, but now it's not? I think you're going to start to see more and more and more of that as time goes by, and you're going to see sort of a repeat of the awakening that we saw in sort of a, not all at once, but in a sort of large block of time. Like, it was like within a year, there were tons of people online very publicly talking about how they just recently gotten out of, like, the right-wing, alt-right rabbit hole, right? Like, it felt like a lot of people in that age demographic hit around 18 years old, 19 years old, and kind of snapped out of it. Like, the repetitiveness of it just kind of hit them. The hypocrisy and the contradictions just kind of hit them. Their life experience showed them that the claims made by these grifters just don't add up, and they just kind of snapped out of it. I think it's going to happen again. I think we're already kind of seeing it happen. I think this sort of era of right-wing dominance is already falling apart.
Outfit we've all seen 1,000 times before led to a lot of the usual suspects complaining about the, I don't know, women in trousers agenda.
Together, we...
Yeah, Shadiversity.
I'm fascinated to hear your thoughts.
You don't have a whip out, pants and halberd in Smash Bros.
Yeah.
So this is him ranting about how the cartoon character isn't realistically wielding the weapon and isn't realistically dressed for fighting with said weapon, because he's like an unironic, like, medieval neckbeard guy who makes his own gambeson vests and shit.
Well, they're taking away the femininity of
Peach.
Yeah.
Princess Peach.
Yeah.
Give it her pants.
After the film came out, of course, its place in the narrative changed. The Mario movie became anti-woke also, necessitating some frankly embarrassing backpedaling.
This is the part where she tries to say, what are you talking about, Peach? Wearing pants. She's wearing pants. Is she aware that this is us reacting to the trailer and we don't have that context? Because when we had that context, did we criticize her wearing? No, we didn't. It makes perfect sense she's wearing pants. Not a problem at all. But in the trailer...
What? So it's not woke? Why would your first thought be that it's what? How? What kind of slippery, slimy backpedaling is this? Well, actually, you see, we didn't have the context for why the woman was wearing pants. She is actually wearing the pants because those were practical for her to be wearing at the time. So then it's not woke. So I guess in this case, woke is when woman wears pants for no reason. So that's what woke is this time. Okay, we've got it. We got it, chat. I think we know. We know what woke is now.
We didn't know that. It actually looked like they might have been removing the dress entirely, or at least most often. So
Oh my God. Okay.
Bowser is coming.
Yeah, the dress is in the trailer. I haven't seen this movie, by the way.
There's a huge universe out there. No pressure.
In this case, in the case of Guardians, wokeness is at once self-evident, so self-evident that you'll never get a straightforward definition.
Woke politics. We all know what they are, and they don't include eugenics or animal cruelty from what I've understood. I could be wrong.
But also collapsible at a moment's notice. Why? How? Well, sadly, there is no canonical answer, no explanation for those flip-flops which would satisfy the wokeness conspiracy's crusty basement-dwelling believers. But it does tell us something.
Isn't it insane how many of these people are, like, unironically the stereotypical neckbeard loser? Like, they're literally in rooms. They have neckbeards, for starters. Like, they unironically have neckbeards. They're in rooms that look like... I'm pretty sure this guy has stuck all of his action figures... Actually, I'm going to call them dolls to piss him off. This guy looks like he's just, like, stuck all these dolls to the wall using cum. Like, there's so many years worth of his, like, nut on the wall that he's been able to just kind of, like, stick them to the wall like a Minecraft torch.
Basement-dwelling believers, but it does tell us something. Wokeness is a malleable thing. If Guardians 3 can be woke one month and anti-woke the next, then wokeness can't be located within the work. It has to come from outside of it. It has to be projected onto its surface. So let's talk about that process of projection. Sometimes it's straightforward. Sometimes, yes, a character might make wry reference to contemporary politics or discourse.
I think I'm a fan of the 21st century.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up. We make a mean prosthetic, but fascism is back.
I mean, I know socialism is a charged word, but we could learn a lot from these...
Sometimes a film will include queer affection, and it won't matter that more often than not that queer affection is peripheral.
Wild to have that line in a Disney movie, though.
It won't even matter that most of these films treat queer relationships exactly the same as hetero ones. That you could reshoot those home scenes in Eternals, replace Fastos' husband with a woman.
Yeah, like they don't really do, like, most of the time, from my understanding, I don't really know how much different, like, gay relationships tend to be from straight relationships for reasons you can probably imagine, but, like, apparently media is notoriously bad at demonstrating or representing gay relationships. Like, a lot of the time they'll just write a straight relationship and then make it gay. I don't know, like, what you would do differently exactly, but apparently there are things you should do differently. I've been made aware of that.
And they play out more or less identically. Because the reactionary audience is by now convinced
probably
that
more
queer
money.
Existence isn't equal or comparable to straight existence, is less. For the grifter, this is easy mode, but not every suspected woke project will feature a light-year kiss, so when they don't, when there is no straightforward woke spotlighting, another tactic is needed. Luckily, such a tactic exists. It's easy, it's flexible, and it gets results. I've made oblique reference to it in the past. I think I called it brain-dead symbology in one video or another. But here, now that we're looking directly at it, I'd like to coin a snappier term. Woke spotting. Woke spotting is laser-focused, bad faith interpretation. It's the art of combing through a work to find individual details which can be contorted into support for your own foregone conclusion. At its most basic, it's really just a game of recognizing objects, man, woman, family, government, dress, gun, and the positioning of those objects. Woman defeats man, family dominates man, woman rejects dress, government dominates man, in a way that can be read, however flimsily, as pushing the nebulous woke agenda.
They can frame it however they want, but it's better if it's just aesthetics. That's literally all it takes, is the aesthetics. Let's see what happens if I Google SJW. Let's say you have a trailer for The Boys, okay? The next season of The Boys gets announced, okay? And you have a character that they're going to introduce who's going to be like a very prominent, important character in the story of the new season of The Boys. They're going to be a protagonist. I'm surprised the fact that nothing is coming up here. Well, we'll just bring up this image of Big Red. All of the images that come up are like the big four. As it turns out, there are not that many images of SJWs online. They've really just been using the same four images for years. They announced the new character is going to be this lady. All it would take Even if Big Red was not like a notorious like SJW figure, they just had someone who looks like this play a character, it would be over. The chuds would actually lose their fucking mind. They would just say, this person looks woke, and claim the inclusion of this character would be like a woke agenda. No matter how much it makes sense in the story or anything, if they just have a character introduced that looks like this, they will lose their mind. But if the show still succeeds, and they can't monetize hate for it anymore, they will switch to claiming it's actually not woke. And they will find something else that is more profitable to hate at the moment and claim that is the woke thing. And the thing they were previously calling woke garbage is actually the non-woke, anti-woke thing in competition with the woke thing. And they can attach the success of the thing they once hated to the success of their beliefs. And the failure of the thing that they hate now, out of nowhere all of a sudden, to the failure, quote-unquote, of the left. And of the wokeness, I guess. Like, go woke, go broke. It's a grift.
Importantly, how the story frames these objects and positions is largely unimportant. If it happens to line up with the anti-woke narrative, great, but if not, it doesn't matter. All the woke-spotting game requires is that those positioned objects be there in some capacity. The already established anti-woke mythology does the rest, does the heavy lifting, substitutes in for framing. For instance, when the Mario trailers were woke-spotted, it was observed that, again, in Peach's wardrobe, trousers replaced dress. It didn't matter that Peach was, of course, wearing trousers because she was karting, or that this costuming is included in the film as yet another game reference in a film literally built from them. That context didn't matter. This detail got decontextualized, dragged kicking and screaming into some abstract culture war space, frothing at the mouth about the destruction of traditional gender roles and all that. With real
Back in 2016, it was the fall of Western values.
context swapped out for anti-woke mythology, the film's straightforward, sensible decision to put Peach in trousers becomes craven, woke gesturing, at once obvious and subliminal, both a loud performative gesture and insidious, corruptive messaging. The Captain Marvel film might see our titular heroine talking down to men, and it doesn't matter that from her perspective she's talking to the equivalent of 13th century country bumpkins, it doesn't matter that she's no more cocky than insert list of beloved male protagonists here. No, this becomes read as simply film thinks woman better than man. Similarly, the fact that
the crazy thing as well is how much conservatives lost their mind over the Terminator reference in Captain Marvel. In Captain Marvel, there's a scene that is a blatant reference to Terminator 2 because, you know, it takes place in the 90s. Terminator 2, like literally I think the biggest blockbuster or one of the biggest blockbusters in all of the 90s. She comes out of like a store. Oh my god, my nose won't stop itching. I love the streamer nose itch. She comes out of like a store. She's just landed on Earth. At this point in the movie, she is a bad guy. Like, explicitly. At the start of Captain Marvel, and this is the thing a lot of like the Chud channels don't really, they kind of gloss over this. For the first half, if not 2/3 of Captain Marvel's a villain. She's working for space fascists. It's not till like the 2/3 point of the movie she realizes, oh, I'm actually not fighting with the good guys. I'm the bad guy right now. And while she is in that first 2/3 of the movie, she is a massive bitch. She's a massive bitch in those scenes a lot of the time in the first 2/3 of the movie, which is intentional. Because she's literally working for the villains and thinks she's justified in doing so. And she has an "are we the baddies" moment, and it results in a fair decent change in her personality. There are some parts of that movie that I have pretty, like, I even cringe at, like the fight scene on the ship where it's like, I'm just a girl. Like, that shit was pretty cringe. But the idea that scene where she comes out of the store in the beginning and the guy, like, does the most stereotypical sexual harassing thing you can imagine. He's like, hey, lady. He's, like, on a motorcycle. He's just, like, stereotypical motorcycle bro. He's like, hey, lady, you should smile more. You'd look a lot prettier if you smiled. And so she looks at him, and she's just like, okay. And she, like, breaks his hand or something, and then, like, steals his motorcycle jacket. Like, give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle, I think she even says or something. But it was, like, a very, very blatant reference to Terminator 2, because it's literally the 90s, reminder. And Chuds were so mad about this because their interpretation of that was that she harmed this man and assaulted him for no reason. And then they turned this guy into, like, for a brief time, into, like, a mascot of their community. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back when I did my debate with Rags, I did a research stream. We were watching some of Rags' recent streams with other, like, grift, like, anti-woke YouTubers. And they were doing a video where they were just randomly bringing up this guy and calling him by a name. Like, just a random dude name, like, as if he was, like, this legendary, well-known figure. And it took me, like, 20 minutes of watching to realize that's the canonical name of the motorcycle guy that sexually harasses Captain Marvel. So they were like, I think his name was, like, Chet. So they're like, oh, yeah, that was he was full-on Chet there, yeah. Well, it's just like, is this how massive of losers you are, that you, like, found out the name that is of the character that is, like, you have to look in the credits to find the name of that character, by the way, so that you can, like, celebrate him because he's the guy who sexually harasses Captain Marvel in the movie, and you see him as, like, a martyr who got beat up for no reason. And then they made hundreds of videos on the actress who plays Captain Marvel. These people are psychotic. They really, really are.
Some bad or dumb men exist in She-Hulk, the fact that at some points female characters are indignant towards male ones meant obviously that the show was widely taken as woke, agenda-driven misandry. As we've discussed before in a whole video, it doesn't matter that our protagonist's flawed outlook at the show's beginning is explicitly spelled out later on in the show, or that we see plenty of positive male characters, yada yada yada, watch the video linked on screen now for more. No, all that matters is that in this scene, men creep on women, and in this scene, woman disagrees with man, and that's enough to start the outrage farming. That's enough to conjure up the honest-to-God typhoon of She-Hulk hates men. She-Hulk shows the MCU hates you, the viewer. Left-wing values are corrupting
and then all they have to do as well is show, like, a random after-credits scene that's literally like a like fourth wall breaking joke where it's She-Hulk twerking, and they can use that in their thumbnails and be like, this show's insane. It's like, that was literally like a non-canon, like, meme after credits scene. It's just they'll just lie. They know their audiences aren't actually watching these shows.
Destroying culture sentiment that followed. It doesn't matter that the narratives which tie this outrage to the text don't hold up under any amount of scrutiny, because they don't need to hold up. They just need to have enough points of contact with the work to support a flimsily built narrative for the length of a YouTube video or so, no matter how much of a stretch it is. And woke spotting doesn't always have to be done explicitly. Indeed, if the creator's interested in plausible deniability, sometimes it's better to do this euphemistically, to simply cherry-pick.
Oh yeah, the less you marry yourself to the idea that a piece of media is going to fail because it's woke, the more foolproof your rhetoric is. The easier you make it to backpedal and claim, actually, I didn't mean that, the better the better off you're gonna be, because it's easier to just go back and say, oh, actually, no, I never meant that it was gonna fail and it's gonna go woke, go broke when it, does succeed. Exactly. If people watch what these people complain about, they know it's bullshit. Yeah, it's a big part of, like, what I noticed with Rings of Power. Usually I don't pay attention to, like, the freakouts over this kind of stuff, but Lord of the Rings is, like, my favorite thing ever. So, I was going to give Rings of Power a try because I wanted to like it, and I found myself liking it a lot more than I expected. I was really not expecting to like it. I did not give myself any expectations other than, I think, that default, like, skepticism. I really was convinced by people talking about it that it was going to be like a remake of Lord of the Rings, which it didn't end up being, which kind of immediately, like, the second I found out that it's an adaptation of the events following the War of Wrath, I was like, oh, wait, this isn't at all the lies of what people told me this was going to be. Wait, this is, like, actually adapting a real timeline in Tolkien's story. And I very quickly grew to like the show and realized very fast that the people who are making content and comments shitting on it are probably not watching it. It was a pretty interesting realization that there's sort of this entire demographic of people online that don't watch any of these shows or movies or anything. They just listen to YouTubers rant about how it's woke, take their word for it, and never give it a try. And then they spread that opinion elsewhere and encourage other people to do the same thing. Because if they can convince people not to support a piece of media they deem as woke, maybe they can artificially create the go woke, go broke phenomena they so desperately wish was real.
A few details, misrepresent them a little, and suggest a problematic positioning. That way, technically, you're not making any allegations, you're just asking very leading questions. Here's a recent example of just this.
So I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down
Fucking critical drinker, dude. It is insane how much defense this guy gets because he doesn't as explicitly sort of associate himself with the far right. And yet he's no different than the quartering geeks and gamers, no bullshit. Oh, these people, all these people get so mad when you compare them to no bullshit. That's the crazy thing. No bullshit was the predecessor to all these people. He kind of started the grift that they all do, and they've refined in their own different ways. And they hate when you compare them to no bullshit. Critical Drinker and Mahler, notably, hate getting compared to no bullshit. They really hate it. Because no bullshit does their thing, but long ago was like exposed and just realized by his fan base to be full of shit. These content creators have an audience mostly consisting of sort of new age, like teen radicalized chuds who are inevitably in large numbers going to find themselves breaking out of it and realizing they're being grifted to.
Technically, you're not making any allegations, you're just asking very leading questions. Here's a recent example of just this.
So I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident. The first movie portrayed him as an aging, burned out loser who only redeems himself at the end, while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it. Is this some weird attempt to mock and belittle the Spider-Man that most people know and love, who incidentally just happens to be the only straight white man in the entire movie? I don't know, man, it just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, that's all.
Straight white male is out-alphaed by the woke spider people. Sour taste left in mouth. Cherry-picked. Agenda suggested. Time to move on. I'm sure there's plenty of other Spider-Verse examples, but I wrote the rest of this video back in May, and look, it's already long enough, so let's get back to it. That is woke spotting, the interpretative trick that allows a piece of media to be marked as a valid target for the conspiratorial, alt-right driven collective hate ceremonies of the anti-woke movement. It's incredibly easy to pull off, and you can do it to practically anything. Let me show you what I mean. The other day, I asked my followers on Twitter for some examples of TV and film that are not considered woke. Not anti-woke, mind, just
The Boys. We brought this show up as an example earlier in the segment. The Boys. Perfect example of the blatant hypocrisy of the right and what they consider woke or not. The fucking Boys. Best example. It's woke as fuck. The creator of the show, Eric Kripke, massive SJW. The writers, the people, everyone behind the show is a massive fucking SJW. I watched a lot of Supernatural before The Boys. There are a lot of very explicit progressive jokes put in there. I mean, hell, look at Eric Kripke's Twitter, but like, yeah, it's very clear what the political leanings of the actors, the writers, the showrunner, director, everything. And yet, conservatives, because they notoriously lack any form of media analysis and literacy, they view Homelander notoriously as the good guy. How many conservatives have you seen unironically believing Homelander is the hero? It's a massive epidemic of conservatives, and the creator of the show himself has talked about it. But because the surface level aesthetics of the show are so gritty, grungy, and like it takes advantage of things like toxic masculinity, etc., to make the show feel more compelling to that audience, the messaging flies right over their heads and they enjoy it nonetheless. And they don't call The Boys woke. It's interesting. I think that's a really good example of how very blatantly hypocritical these people are. The same Metal Gear. Metal Gear is a good example. It's not called woke. It's often not even called political, and yet it is extremely political and arguably quite woke too.
things which aren't typically considered to be within the purview of this little culture war. We're going to look at a few of these suggestions and show how easy it is to project wokeness upon them. One suggestion was Friends, which I think is a pretty solid starting point, being essentially the cultural background noise for vast swathes of the Western world around the time of the new millennium. But here's the thing, it's woke.
Sometimes men love women, sometimes men love men.
Woke.
One of the main ongoing storylines in the early seasons results from the fact that Ross's marriage broke down when his wife realized she was political. Sorry, I misspoke. When she realized she was a lesbian. This is something we're introduced to in the very first episode.
And you never knew she was a lesbian. No, okay? Why does everyone keep fixating on that?
And which we go on to follow closely. The ex-wife Carol finds a new partner and marries her. An episode is dedicated to this, and Ross, the poor beta male cuck, even gives his ex-wife away to her new bride. Look, I'm sure you don't need me to break down how this.
God, you could not have made that episode today.
Like it came out today, but just to make it explicit,
you could not
using
make
that model
today.
of woke spotting outlined above, the objects here are woman, lesbian, and submissive man. The positioning would be woman leaves submissive man for lesbian, and the existing anti-woke mythology of Hollywood and TV studios trying to.
You could not get away with that today. You could not get away with that today. Dude, you know what I love about that quote, though? My favorite are, like, the chuds who say, you couldn't make insert thing today. Recently, not recently, but somewhat recently, Joe Rogan had Robert Downey Jr. on his show. And he tried to pull that shit on Robert Downey Jr. And Robert Downey Jr.'s response was based as fuck. Joe Rogan's like, what do you think? I don't feel like you could make Tropic Thunder today. Do you think you could make Tropic Thunder today? And Robert Downey Jr. replies, no, you could definitely make it today. But should you make it today is a completely different question. I mean, I debated whether or not it should have been made even back then. And then he goes on to describe what his mom said to him when he said he was taking that role and what he'd be doing. And and he does an impression of his mom, and his mom was like, no, you shouldn't do this. No, you should not do this. It was a funny clip. Yeah, like, people try to pull that shit, but unironically, the you couldn't make this today thing applies better to the right getting triggered about stuff that was fine back in the day now. Like, the right are the most triggerable people out there. They're the ones who are, like, looking over every bit of a piece of media to find anything they can call woke and then denounce it and try to, like, they'll review bomb it. They'll try to manufacture a failure of the piece of media they don't like so that they can say the thing they don't like is unpopular.
Beam radically subversive ideas about gender and sexuality into the idle minds of watchers would do the rest. Friends, then, is just as woke in the co-opted sense as the Mario movie ever was, as Guardians was, as She-Hulk was. But it's not just Friends. You could also look to Seinfeld here, in many ways the yin to Friends yang, which had a whole episode dedicated to telling the audience there's nothing wrong with being gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not at all.
But shoving it down our throats a little hard there, don't you think, NBC?
And which featured in Elaine a somewhat groundbreaking depiction of a female lead whose story wasn't oriented around finding the one, settling down, and instead constituted a frank, non-judgmental look at modern single life.
Well, I'll take 3.
3.
Yeah, well, make it 10.
10.
20 sponges should be plenty.
Through our woke-spotting telescope, though, in Elaine, we see woman reject family, add in her vocal pro-abortion position some spiel about loose sexual morals, and hey presto, you've got the basis for a woke Seinfeld takedown screed. Let's not forget Frasier here.
You know what's really interesting about this? I watched a video from somebody that I can't even remember the name of. I don't remember what their name was. They were some chud YouTuber trying to explain why Ripley, an alien, isn't woke. Why are Sarah Connor and Ripley not woke? Why is it that 100% if you made those movies today, the right would lose their shit and call it woke garbage? But back then, and hell, these are movies you literally, like, laud as, like, examples of good movies that have female protagonists, for example. Why are they okay, but whatever new thing you're complaining about isn't? And this guy's explanation was very interesting. He basically went full mask off about it. Back when they were kids, and they were watching these movies, there was no woke agenda. The woke agenda is a newer thing. It came about with the invention of the internet, and Tumblr, and Twitter. So it's nowadays is when you have to look for it. And it made me realize, wow, a lot of these people feel like modern history started when they became adults. Like, their perspective changed when they became adults, and they thought the whole world changed. They didn't realize they changed. And I think that was a pretty interesting realization. And this person was like a much smaller content creator, not one of those big, like, shield paid off people, like somebody who's genuinely been fooled into believing this garbage and was making content pushing it to a very small audience. And it became clear, back when they were kids, they just weren't looking for it. They weren't looking for anything that has a woman being strong or a gay character being seen as woke, because there was no propaganda or culture war around it. The culture war itself creates the problem that they are complaining about. It makes them look for these things, and then they see evidence where it doesn't exist. Oh, this character in this video game is black? Must be the woke, like, shoehorning of non-white characters. And they'll just see it because they want to see it at that point.
Also among those Twitter suggestions, a show focusing on a rich coastal elite embracing a new, decidedly non-nuclear household structure, for which you could make a similar abandonment of traditional values case. But let's leave the 90s sitcoms behind, go wider with this. What other pop cultural touchstones are secretly woke? One reply points out that Chuds would hate Alien and Aliens if they came out today.
Yep.
And that is obviously bang
Yep.
on. We'll
Damn
shortly
right.
return to the fact that these films do get a pass these days, but woke spotting is piss easy here. Solo woman defeats immensely homicidal alien that had torn through the rest of the crew, and in the sequel, not only does woman defeat aliens, men, highly trained, outfitted men, fail to. Avatar's woke too. Natives good, white men bad. Christ, even Shrek is woke. Shrek is the story of some Antifa hermit successfully dismantling.
Okay, but Shrek and Avatar have some level of ambiguity to their woke messaging. If it requires even the slightest bit of looking into allegory, they will not detect it. That's how this works. They cannot see allegory. It's why Chuds love Tolkien and Lord of the Rings so much, because of that one extremely out of context quote about how Tolkien, quote-unquote, famously hated allegory. He was referencing religious allegory. He was talking about how his story is not an allegory for Christianity despite his own Christian views. Ugh. These people do not have the ability to look past the surface of media. Shrek is about an ogre who's funny and wants them out of his damn swamp. He wants these people out of his damn swamp, and he's an ogre, and he's funny. That's what Shrek's about to these people. There's nothing beyond that. If you try to analyze Shrek any further than that, you're memeing. You're either joking or you are a joke. That's how these people think.
Handling the state's unjust landholding system. But we don't even have to look that deep into it. We can just see that the story ends celebrating the main female character's transformation from classical, ideal feminine beauty to a body type and mode of existence that goes against the grain of society's traditional gender stereotypes more widely, and ding ding, woke film alert. Another user suggested No Time to Die, which is a super interesting example because it had a broadly similar reception to that of Guardians 3. Susceptible viewers were whipped up into a frenzy by anti-woke responses to the trailers and promotional materials, only for the narrative to shift after the film's release.
The good news is that the movie is nowhere near as bad as those early trailers suggested, which basically painted Bond as a useless, miserable pussy, constantly getting pushed around and berated by his strong, empowered female replacements.
To the point that now, in 2023, it can reasonably be brought up as an example of non-woke media. Indeed, it has been read convincingly as a failed attempt to rehabilitate the misogyny inherent to Daniel Craig's Bond. But for our purposes here, to project wokeness onto this film, all we have to do is look back to that initial response, which really was woke spotting at its most harebrained. Lashana Lynch's Nomi was, of course, identified as woman of color replacing man, and as more plot details were teased, Bond's devotion to Léa Seydoux' Madeleine Swann, first female lead to appear across 2 subsequent Bond films, was taken as woman turns iconic symbolic Sigma male into simp.
Oi fellas, is it woke to fall in love?
So forget about the actual film, forget about the fact that it wasn't really woke in that original sense, that Nomi wasn't the Hollywood agenda replacing Bond with a woman of color, that the temporary inheritance of the 007 codename by her spoke not to the shadowy media impact of Kathleen Kennedy's feminist mind virus, but to the anachronistic undercurrent of No Time to Die, the part of the film that wonders how suited Bond, MI6, spycraft is to the modern world, how far Britain and its surroundings have changed since Ian Fleming put pen to paper. No, forget all that. With our woke spotting glasses on, all we have to do is mark the object, here black woman, and the position at its most superficial.
So, I think a really big part of this is that apathy that starts to set in a lot of people around 16 to 18 years old when it comes to media. Something I've noticed a lot of lately is TikToks and videos from gaming channels talking about how video games just don't feel the same anymore. They don't have as much fun playing video games anymore, and they're sad about that. And they find themselves gaming less and less excited about gaming, playing like all that stuff. Have you guys seen these videos too? It's become a really common trend I've noticed the last couple years. Is these younger guys, mostly, doing, like, commentary videos about how they've fallen out of love with gaming, like, significantly in the last few years. And all these guys that post this stuff are usually in their early 20s. And I noticed something. Is it that gaming has changed that much, and there's not actually any good games out compared to, like, the 2010s? Or is it that this entire batch of Gen Z has reached this, like, you know, first quarter, the end of their first quarter of their life, roughly, and they're getting older, they're getting more responsibility, a lot of things are changing in their lives in a very short period of time. Maybe they've just moved out on their own, they have their first job, they have college, they have classes, they have bills to pay, maybe they're in relationships and they have other responsibilities to uphold. A lot of them, it just becomes very clear that they don't miss the way games used to be. They miss the way life was when they were a kid and they had no responsibility, when they could just game all day. And this may sound pretty unrelated and like it doesn't matter, but the reason why this stands out to me is I feel like those guys are the types of dudes falling for this shit. The types of people who have found their favorite hobbies that they might have even dedicated their entire personality to, like gaming. They're finding it to just sort of like not be something they're as in love with as they get older, because they're not kids anymore. They've got responsibilities and lives to attend to. And they are responding to it by saying, wait, no, I want things to be like when I was a kid. I'm nostalgic for when I was a kid. And this must mean things are changing. And they must be changing in bad ways. And I thought the same thing, too. I had the same phase. Like when Fortnite was like really getting big, and I saw that like Minecraft was kind of dying back when Minecraft was having its like slump off back in the day. I was like kind of feeling I felt old. I felt a little like bitter about it, you know, like, these kids aren't, Fortnite's shit compared to Minecraft, like how it was back in its peak. Fortnite YouTube's shit compared to how Minecraft YouTube back was in its peak. I had a real childhood online, not these kids. But then, two realizations hit me. I saw the video of those kids that are like, we like Fortnite, we like Fortnite. And then I also saw classic WoW players talking about EverQuest and classic WoW and stuff. And I realized, wait a second, things are changing, but they've always been changing. It's just that now we've gotten used to a certain thing. Our memories we've gotten attached to memories and nostalgia, and things have gotten different. They've progressed, they've moved on, and people get bitter about it. Some people get excited about it, some people get bitter, some people get scared. And that's just frankly the general feeling of being afraid of progress. And I think we're seeing it somewhat expedited in Gen Z because everything moves so fast on the internet. The internet is such a different place to a 21-year-old now than when they were 10 years old. Like, the internet's so different now than when I was 10. And I spent all my time online when I was 10 and 11 and 12. A lot of my memories are online, and there's no recapturing that era of the internet. And so because things change so quickly online, you've got Gen Z feeling like boomer nostalgia at a very young age, and that's leading to this sort of like mindset that makes them way more open to the idea that things have been changed because of the wokeness. The wokeness has come about and it's ruined your favorite things like gaming and movies and TV shows and comics, whatever it might be.
Replacing white man, and hey presto, we arrive, as so many did, at the conclusion that the film is woke. That's it. That's the trick. That's the bad faith hermeneutic multi-tool that facilitates the lion's share of this online, laughably transparent culture war bollocks. So what can this methodology tell us about this present wave of online alt-right inspired reactionary creators? Well, let's recap. As we've established, wokeness is malleable. It's projected onto the text. It isn't within it, and especially since no real definition of wokeness is ever given, that act of projection has an almost unlimited flexibility. So Marvel is woke, and Friends is woke too. Seinfeld, Frasier, Alien, Shrek, James Bond, everything is woke. Even the things that really aren't too progressive under the surface, they're woke. There is no real connection between the ethos of a film and its wokeness. But that ungroundedness, that flexibility, goes both ways.
The limits of wokeness.
Also like Guardians, though admittedly to a lesser degree, after No Time to Die came out and people actually got to see that these claims of replacement and filmmaking by quota were overblown and unhinged, the viewership gradually abandoned these convictions of wokeness, stopped clutching their pearls. The amount of post-release videos on No Time to Die's wokeness and failure pales in comparison to more recent targets. The narrative started to become untenable, and those pushing it realized. Sound familiar?
You know, wearing pants, she's wearing pants in the film because she was on the...
They don't believe anything. They believe nothing. They're all loser, grifter pieces of shit. And the craziest thing, hey Soak Done Left, the craziest thing as well, is that these people are the most stereotypical neckbeard losers ever. But because they have a big YouTube channel and money, that makes them not a loser? I guess? Is that how that works? This guy who would, like, if this guy was doing what he does for a living but wasn't a YouTuber, he would be a massive loser. The butt of, like, a lot of people's jokes, right? The stereotypical, like, neckbeard basement dweller. But he does this for YouTube, so he's not that, I guess? It's like nobody really gives him shit. It's really strange. Liked and chatted to boost the algorithm. Thanks, Soak Done Left. I appreciate that, homie.
The motorbike. Is she aware that this is us reacting to the trailer and we don't have that context?
There are a few reasons why this can happen, why these narratives can fall apart. Individually, these reasons are manageable, but multiple...
TBH, this is like 1/20th of Shad's content. That's the problem, though. I was really into his content when it was just about medieval, like, history and, like, life in a medieval... Like, it would be like, here's what it's like in the life of a man living in medieval Europe. So let's say you're somewhere in what would be modern-day France, and you're walking down the street, and you approach a gatehouse, and there is a guard up on top of the gatehouse. They would say, "Oh, stop there," and you would stop, and you would lift your hands in the air, and you would keep your hands away from your blade. Like, he would talk about, like, what life would be like it's a story if you were a person living that. And those are good videos. They're good videos. And he even has some pretty cool demonstration stuff. But then he also does these podcasts and extra videos about how insert this is woke and or insert that is woke. And it's like... I think it's because he recognizes that his content already has a pretty large demographic pool with chuds who are into, like, medieval knight Europe shit. And then you've got the, you know, you can sort of double down on that without overtly outing yourself as a conservative by jumping on the bandwagon of calling things woke. He talks to Sargon too, yeah.
At once will overwhelm any would-be woke spotter. For one, a pre-release woke spotted project being loved by general audiences, but...
Who the fuck would hire me to voice act? Like, dog, I do not have a very pleasant to listen to voice, you know? I don't feel like I'd be a good voice actor at all.
Not by critics, puts the reactionary in a tricky position. The critics, after all, are held to be agents of the agenda, and the audience reaction is the only thing you can really trust. They're not being Venmo'd to like or dislike things by Brie Larson and Kathleen Kennedy like all those woke critics. No, they're real, honest fans. If they like something and the Hollywood elites over on Rotten Tomatoes don't, persisting with that woke labeling requires a good amount of cognitive dissonance, both on the part of the creator and their audience. Sometimes interviews begin to pose problems, especially if the people behind a given project decide to extend an olive branch or two to the fans. Clarify, they're not trying to be woke, honest. The biggest fly in the ointment, though, is just success. One of the key tenets of the anti-woke mythology is get woke, go broke. And the centrality of this idea is obvious from the amount of box office tracking videos these chuds pump out. So if a film or a show they've woke spotted is an obvious success, financially or statistically, things get difficult. And the easy way out is to recant on that woke spotting, to claim you'd got it wrong, that this one isn't woke actually. This way, the blessed mantra of get woke, go broke is preserved. Pulling off that U-turn might make you look a bit silly, but it is the only real choice you have. We talked above about
better to take a small, I made a mistake, actually it wasn't woke, than to basically allow the admission of, okay, well this thing is woke, but it succeeded. Because the narrative can't fail. You can make a mistake, and it can be alright. Your audience will just say, oh, it's all good. But if the narrative, if the worldview fails, then people are going to be like, wait, what? Go woke, go, but you don't go broke, though.
The way that the anti-woke mythology does the heavy lifting here, how it's the accelerant.
Because remember, the important core of their argument, you have to remember, is that people don't want this. That this does not sell. That wokeness, as they call it, makes media fail. People don't want it, and it makes media fail. That is the point that they are making. That wokeness makes media bad, and thus it makes it fail. And if that is not true, if a movie that they call woke garbage ends up being so popular that everyone ends up watching it, and it ends up succeeding objectively in the box office, audience and reviewer scores are both positive, they have to turn the narrative around. They make the full U-turn, as he said.
It transforms banal observations about women doing things in media into telltale signs of sinister leftist propaganda, but that power does have a drawback, because as a result, no one chud is bigger than the collective mythology. If any of these reactionary creators were to try and question or modify the mythology, the sacred doctrines of anti-fandom, most of their viewers would just tune out. There are always plenty of other non-heretical chud channels to choose from, after all. They'd start catching flack on Twitter, they'd stop getting invites to Friday Night Tights, the grift would dry up. The reactionaries know this, know that
God. Friday Night Tights. So this is one of those chud, like, get-together podcasts where they call everything woke. You got Geeks and Gamers, the chud guy with all the dolls nutted on the wall, this guy I don't recognize, this guy I don't recognize. I think that's Critical Drinker. I don't know who this is supposed to be. Nerdrotic. Oh, yeah, this is Nerdrotic. You're right, yeah. Looks like Chud Logic. True.
Night Tights, the grift would dry up. The reactionaries know this, know that sticking to the script together benefits everyone.
They all look the same.
And if that means every now and then one of them has to babble out an embarrassing mea culpa, then so be it. That's how powerful,
they're all
how beneficial
neckbeards.
This mythology is, but it does have its limits. Let's get back to Alien. Why isn't that woke? But simply,
why are they literally all unironic neckbeards? They're all neckbeards. Every one of them. They all have the unironic fucking neckbeard.
Anti-wokeness didn't start soon enough. The consensus that, alien equals good is too entrenched. Any reactionary who tried to claim otherwise would look like a fool, and the Emperor's new clothes would be seen by all. Put less simply, like so many of the right-wing narratives which inspired anti-wokeness, the mythology relies heavily on the good old days, the idea that today's culture is fallen, that things used to be better before those new, progressive values came about. The date of this fall into wokeness is flexible. Often it's supposed to have occurred around the release of the Ghostbusters reboot, or The Last Jedi, maybe Avengers Endgame, in order to piggyback on existing fan negativity. Sometimes the critical period is Gamergate, but it's always recent, always in the last 20 or so years. Popular cinema in the 20th century is always the good, representing the non-woke gold standard we're supposed to yearn for a revival of. Why is that the case? Part of it's nostalgia. For marks of a certain age, those 80s or 90s classics were childhood viewing, and thus acquire a rose-tinted aura in retrospect. In addition, time has a sieve-like effect on culture. The best bits are remembered, the worst are not. in 30 years will remember the Avengers. Divergent, not so much. It also has to do with the fact that anti-wokeness is the nerd wing of the culture war. In these spaces...
It's crazy because when I was a kid, for some reason, I was under the impression that nerds were smart. If you liked nerdy media, you were likely to be smart. And if you were smart, you were likely to be, because I was raised pretty, like, progressive, to be, like, liberal, right? And then, you know, obviously, it's, as we know, nope. No, the nerd community online is very right-leaning.
The original Star Wars, Alien, Terminator, Predator films, those older Star Trek shows, and so on, these are canonical works, the foundations of modern nerd culture, and that's been the case for decades, long before YouTube ever played host to any creators railing against the message. But there is, of course, a difficulty here, and we've already seen it. If the Aliens films came out today, the Chuds would hate them. If the Terminator films came out today, the Chuds would hate them. By the same ticket that today's hot-button female-led projects are woke, these are woke. The presence of that dastardly agenda, wokeness, in this modern reactionary sense, is manufactured and projected onto all superficially applicable surfaces alike. And if they did it to No Time to Die, they'd have done it to Alien. To get away from this, today's reactionaries and their viewers will exhort, in ruthlessly meaningless terms, how those were different, those weren't politically motivated, those women weren't forced in, or they'll just avoid the topic altogether. But to anyone who hasn't drank the Kool-Aid, or isn't trying to make a quick buck from outrage farming on the algorithm, the mismatch here, the cognitive dissonance, is clear. He may not be parading through the city, but the Emperor is still wearing those new clothes, and every now and then he slips up, stands too near a window, and more people see. The reactionary grift, the mythology of wokeness it bolsters, which in turn bolsters it, these ludicrous doctrines of anti-fandom do not make sense. The basis is not reason or logic, it's emotion and faith, and every one of these mismatches, of these public moments of cognitive...
Dude, I looked up a FF14 guide the other day, and I was watching it, and I was like, okay, this is helpful, and then I scrolled down and realized it was like a 8-year-old heels versus babyface video. Back before he started the right-wing grift. It was like, whoa. I just stumbled across an ancient fossil from before this guy sold his soul.
Dissonance, these aliens, these Peaches trousers incidents, these Guardians U-turns, reveals this, pulls the curtain back momentarily. And that isn't always enough. Some people are deep enough into this cult, have grown so attached to Mr. Bones' wild ride that they'll rationalize practically anything. But lots aren't, not yet. And every time a grifter slips up, more people realize that it's all a big greasy ball of shit, that the Emperor is stark balls out naked, that if everything
Wait, what was the example?
More people of these public moments of cognitive dissonance, these aliens, these Peaches trousers incidents, these Guardians U-turns, reveals this, pulls the curtain back momentarily. And that isn't always enough. Some people are deep enough into this cult, have grown so attached to Mr. Bones' wild ride that they'll rationalize practically anything, but lots aren't.
Critical drinker when white men like being fathers.
Not yet.
This is why critical drinker is a shit reviewer.
And
critical drinker when a man loves his daughter.
Every time a grifter slips up.
Yeah, I mean, people are waking up to it, I'm telling you guys. Like, people are waking up to this shit. They're starting to see the hypocrisy and they're checking out.
More people realize that it's all a big greasy ball of shit, that the Emperor is stark balls out naked, that if everything can be made woke, then nothing really is. Thank you for watching. Smash that godforsaken.
That is a really good video. Please go send support. Go drop a like, go comment, go subscribe, go send all the support that you can. That is a really, really good video. I'm not done yet though. I have an extra example I want to add on to here. I'm surprised it wasn't used in the video. I was going to bring it up myself earlier, but I was hoping he'd bring it up in the video. But here's the thing I wanted to show you. This is from the House of the Dragon subreddit, okay? This post is from a year ago. It's captioned, "Can't wait for these idiots to eat their words on August 21st. And oh yes, they did, but not in the way that I think you wanted." So, the narrative. Drinkers Chasers. This is the Critical Drinkers, like, podcast he does with, like, Nerdrotic and whatnot. And Mahler and those people. Why nobody cares about House of the Dragon. The reality. House of the Dragon official teaser trailer. 12 million views. And then, of course, the actual show dropped, and he changed the title of that podcast because it made him look bad. Let me see if I can find... Bro switched up 2 months later, skull emoji. This is the original one. Drinkers Chasers, Why Nobody Cares About House of the Dragon from Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, and Mauler. Then they changed the title after the first episode dropped. Drinkers Chasers, House of the Dragon trailer breakdown. They changed the title because the narrative that it's gonna fail and no one cares, if they are remembered as the people who said that, that makes them look bad. That makes the narrative that they try to push, the worldview, look bad. It's all a grift. They have to maintain this air of, I was always right about what was going to succeed and what isn't, because I'm this omniscient, media reviewing god, I guess. I don't even know what they're trying to pull, but I guess it's the idea that they were right all along is what they're trying to make people believe, but whatever it may be. These people are complete grifters, and I'm really happy to see that there's more newer up-and-coming content creators that are calling them out. I really think this is going to be a big part of what helps to sort of bring down this era of chud control of internet culture. I'm excited to see it fall.